Hello everyone.
Hello.
My name is Adrian and I work for Collabora. We're an open source focused consultancy. So our role is to do upstream first approaches and help our customers to adopt like upstream first philosophies and adopt their developments in that direction. We've been doing that for 20 years already. So we've been founded in 2005. I'm a Git newbie, so this is actually my first Git contribution, so please be gentle with me. And I'm giving a quick introduction to two patch series I'm working on. So first of all, a big thank you to everyone who contributed to this patch series. I'm not doing everything from scratch here. I'm building upon others' work, which have been working on this topic for at least 2018. So these are quite long-running topics and partly have already landed in the Git repository. I just want to finish this work, right? So basically I'm just completing what others already started, designed, and worked upon. So big thank you to everybody. Okay, the first topic, encoding Git submodules names. I actually posted version 1 of this series, so you have a link there. You also have a link to the slides at the end. And I did manage to break Windows and Mac builds with that patch series, so sorry about that. I'll fix that in version 2. Okay, so why do this? So this came as a surprise to me. If you run those two commands, one after another, to add two submodules with name foo and foo/bar, you'll get an error. And that's unexpected, right? So why does that happen? Git uses a file backend, which Patrick also mentioned, which stores in the file system under the modules directory, the Git directories, the Git repositories, using the plain name, right? So when you add two submodules named foo and bar, they will conflict in the file system because they will be nested, right? So that's the basic problem we're trying to solve. Now, there are corner cases here, because conflicts also happen in case-insensitive file systems. So if you have something like foobar and foobar with caps, then you will get a conflict. Or you might have problems with reserved file names, something Patrick also touched upon. So my patch also tries to fix that, right? And likely there are even more corner cases than those. And you know, the most dangerous things are the unknown unknowns which you have. So if you have any other like corner cases like this, please raise them up and I'll address them in my series. So much of this work is to identify all the corner cases. So the general solution is to somehow encode those file names so they don't conflict, right? Instead of using the plain name, you encode or hash it. So it's pretty simple. Now, there's a unified API internally, which was added in 2021. So all the code paths which need to work with submodules, they get the names using that function, which is very nice. I found just one exception which hard-coded like that module's name using the plain name, and I fixed that in my patch series. The idea is that that function, if we just modify that function to encode the name, then everybody will use the new names and the new paths. So that unified API is already landed and it's good. Now, we have to make a big decision here. What do we use for the encoding, right? We can use encoding, we can use hashing. Encoding can be reversed. Hashing is one way. If you hash the names, you lose the human readability part of the names. We could even do a combination, like use hash and the name. That's something which I have not in my patch series, but it can be added. So what I did in my version 1 is I used URL encoding, right? But URL encoding is well known, but it's not enough. URL encoding doesn't handle the case-insensitive part. So I had to extend a bit URL encoding. Now, backwards compatibility. We have to be careful not to break existing modules because this is the risk with this series, right? So this is why we decided to split the namespace of submodules, create a new directory alongside the modules directory. We have submodules which store the encoded names, right? So this is the current design. And any new submodule after landing this series will be created under the submodules path. And that's how you keep them separated. You want to avoid situations like a pre-existing module already has like escaping characters from the encoding which you use. And the idea is for the legacy modules to work as before. Okay. There are other corner cases. It's all about the corner cases. So we're adding an ability to override the encoding via configs. So other projects don't need to exactly match the encoding which we add to Git. And users can also change the encoding for specific modules. And this is it basically for this patch series. Please go ahead and review it, give feedback to it, and yeah, I hope to have it landed. Especially on the encoding part, and if you have any other corner cases which we might break. So that's the important thing here. Okay, going on to the next topic, which is big and complex, and I like to call it like a big, hairy, audacious goal. This is from a Build to Last book. So it's about modernizing Git hooks, right? We want to add these new features to like Git hooks. We want to have a unified internal API for hooks, which already exists and has landed. It's hook.h and .c in Git. We want to migrate all the hooks to the new API and also have some nice user interfaces for the hooks, like a git hooks run command or a git hooks list command, right? So you can work nicely with hooks, even just from your shell, right? From your command line. And we want to run hooks in parallel where it's possible. Not all hooks can be parallelized, but some of them can be parallelized. So it makes sense to be able to run them in parallel. And also it would be nice to specify hooks via configs. So in the config file, you can say this event will have these commands which want to run. So you can have multiple hooks for an event, or like you can even have a hooks trace categories. And yeah, so this is like the big goal, right? Now, this has been long running. There was a thread with over 500 messages with many patches, which I went through and my head was spinning at the time, but I managed to understand everything there. So, or almost everything. And we have the base hook API, which is landed. So that was nice. That API is already parallel by design. So hooks are being run sequentially right now because we pass a parameter with jobs equals 1 that makes all the hooks run sequentially. But the idea is that if we want to run any hook in parallel, we just increase the number of jobs. If you pass jobs equals 2 or 5 or 10, then we get parallelism. That's the idea with this API design. There are still some hooks to convert. These are the last outliers. You have a list there. And what blocks those is that we need some API extension for input-output. If we want to run them in parallel, we need to send input via the standard input to the hooks, and we need to collect their output. And as many of you know, when running processes in parallel, doing input and output with them is hard because you might have races. The output might be mangled between the processes which run in parallel. So you need to collate it. You need to organize the output and print it nicely so you know which hook had which output. So that API is missing, and that will be something which I plan to add. Now, we can do a shortcut. We can just skip the parallelism, just convert the hooks and do it sequentially anyway. This will allow us to jump directly to adding the configure feature, the config hooks feature. So we can specify hooks via config and not have parallelism. The idea is that we will just add the parallelism later to it. You know, there's always this danger of like we'll do it later, right? We'll fix it later. And especially when we're talking about adding APIs or interfaces later, it's a bit risky because like might take a long time, or we might break the existing implementation. So yeah, I would like to do it now, but that's also an option, right? Regarding those APIs, I've seen at least 3 different ways to do it. The simplest way, which Junio suggested, was to just put the data in a file and just pass that file as standard input to the hooks, and then the hooks will just read the file, and that would be like the simplest thing to do. There is already an API to specify which file to use as standard input for the hooks. So at least 3 ways to do it. We'll see, like, when reviewing the patch series, which one will be better. I'll do a summary of each of them. Okay. And another important decision we need to make here is, how do we do parallelism? Do we have it on by default, off by default? As I mentioned, the current default is serial execution, so with jobs equals 1, and we could continue doing that. We could enable parallelism for good, known safe hooks, right? Some hooks might be parallel by design. And there's also this problem that the hooks can contain arbitrary user code. So we don't know what data races they might have, and we might end up breaking some existing hooks by enabling parallelism. So maybe we should just keep it serialized by default and have parallelism as an opt-in. So anybody who wants to run their hooks in parallel, they can just enable the config to do so, because the user should know what's in their hooks, right? We don't know exactly what's in each hook. Now, I'm not sure how much of a problem this really is, but yeah, it needs like careful review. We could just, like, for the hooks which we consider to be safe, which we think would be safe to run in parallel, we could just flip the switch and enable that and see if anybody complains or if it actually breaks. So we could also try that approach. Okay. Now, we need to be careful with this because there's a non-zero chance of breaking stuff, right? So both these patches can break like existing modules or existing hooks. And yes, we can change internal APIs more easily, but once users start depending on the new modules encoding or the new configs, then it will be much harder to change them. And we might end up supporting something which it's not like the best thing, and we might want to change it later. So yeah, we have to be careful with these 2 patch series. So my message is to please review and test this stuff. So this was my presentation. Thank you very much. And now, if you have any questions, because I went through a lot of stuff very quickly. Sure, go ahead.
I have one actually. So do we actually need to worry about breaking existing cases where hooks, or where users expect their hooks to run in series? Because right now, users who want more than one hook are actually just providing that by stringing together scripts in the hook directory anyways. So I think it won't, if we don't ever try to parallelize the hook dir hooks with the config hooks, I think we just can't, they don't have anything for us to break, right?
Yes, yes. That's why I was asking, is this like really a problem? Yes, yes. That's a really good point, yes. And there's also a case to be made, like, this is a nasty argument to do, right? But you can say, hey, it's not a bug in Git itself, it's a bug in the hooks. So the user should fix their hooks if they break, right? So we can also make that argument, but like, go ahead.
Question, are you planning also to contribute, or are you already contributing also to JGit? Sorry. The question is, are you planning or are you already contributing also extensions and fixes in JGit, or working only on CGit?
No, I am not. So this is just for Git, and that can be like follow-up work, but there is no plan right now to contribute to others.
Like you said, that there is probably not going to be any backwards incompatibility issues with the way that the new hooks are going to be codified. Like, does that also mean that, for example, libgit 2 and jgit wouldn't need any changes for it to work all right?
My answer is I don't know. I would need to actually test them to see how they behave. Right?
Okay, makes sense.
So first I need to post a version 1 for the second series, right? I need to have the code out, and then I can test them with the other projects. So yeah, this is still like in early stages, and this is just like the design for like the second patch series. This is just like what I want to do, right? And after this conference, like in the next 2 weeks, you'll see the patches for version 1 on the mailing list, right? And we can continue the discussions there, and then we can see how exactly it affects the others. Like the idea is to have like minimal breakage, to not break anything, and if we can have as wide as compatibility as possible, then that's great.
So I know nothing, well, very little about hooks. So forgive me if well, actually, this is about the submodules. Going back to the submodules bit, I know even less about submodules. So forgive me. So forgive me if the question is a bit dumb. But so you're moving the submodules from being into .git/modules to .git/submodules. Does that mean that there's going to be a deprecation notice there, or is there going to be some reason for compatibility issues, or are we always going to carry 2 different directories?
This is a very good question. So they will coexist, right? The existing modules will continue to live under the modules directory, and they will work as before with plain text names, right? And any new submodules you add will be added to the new path with the new encoding, right? Now, we could try to convert the old legacy modules to the new naming system, right? We could try to convert them. I don't do that in my patch series right now, but we might figure out a migration path to not end up with modules and submodules alongside each other, right? But go ahead.
So on the same topic, the submodules thing. So you fixed the path conflicts problem and the name conflicts problems in the .git submodules directory. But what about the actual submodule itself in the repository? Because if you've got a submodule named com1, then okay, sure, now you can store the file in the .git directory, but you can't actually create the directory with the submodule in it because the Windows won't let you if you're on Windows.
Those don't exist. Because as you saw in my first example, you get an error. So you can't do that.
I mean, you can do it on Linux, and then someone can't clone your repo. Like, I'm just wondering what the benefit of being able to store it in the .git directory is if you still can't check it out because the directory can't be created. And similarly, like the ones that are like I almost think like the foo and then foo/bar, that's surely a feature because you can't create foo/bar if foo itself is already a submodule.
Yes. So
It can happen when you rename or when you move a submodule after you create it, right? So that path becomes free in the work tree, but then the name stays the same for the entire lifetime of that repository.
Oh, does it? Okay.
yeah. So thank you, Emily.